Welcome, aspirants. Today, we're diving into a very important topic for GS Paper 2, the Indo-Lanka Accord. Now, you might think, 1987, that's ancient history. But believe me, recent events have brought its unfinished business right back into the spotlight. So let's break down exactly why this is so critical for both your mains and your interview preparation.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We've actually structured this discussion just like you would structure a strong mains answer. First, we'll look at why the Accord is even in the news right now. Then, we'll unpack the core demands, analyze India's position, explore the challenges, and finally, tie it all directly back to your UPSC syllabus.
So, let's get right to it. Why are we talking about an accord from 1987 today? Well, the reason is a very significant diplomatic meeting that has put this entire issue right back on the front page.
What you're seeing here is a delegation of prominent Tamil leaders from Sri Lanka who recently met with India's Vice President C.P. Radhakrishnan during his visit. And what was their main agenda? It was to urge India very strongly to push for the full and final implementation of the Indo-Lanka Accord. You see, this one key meeting has reignited the whole conversation about the Accord's unfulfilled promises.
Okay, so to really understand the weight of that meeting, we need to unpack the core demand itself. What exactly is the Tamil leadership asking for? It all comes back to the original agreement, to what was promised all those years ago.
The fundamental demand is simple yet profound: the complete implementation of the Indo-Lanka Accord. Now, it's absolutely crucial to remember that this wasn't just some informal understanding. This was a formal state-to-state treaty signed at the highest level by Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi and President J.R. Jaywardene. That detail gives it immense legal and diplomatic weight.
And this quote from M.A. Sumantharan, who is a key Tamil leader, just perfectly captures the feeling on the ground. He says very clearly that the Accord's promises, especially on sharing power, have simply never been fulfilled. This deep sense of a promise being delayed or deferred is really the heart of the entire issue.
Now, the key term here, aspirants, and you should make a note of this, is power devolution. Put simply, it's the transfer of power from the central government in Colombo to the provinces. The 13th Amendment to Sri Lanka's constitution was the direct result of the Accord, and it was meant to create provincial councils to make this happen. But here's the real problem. Those very councils have been defunct, basically not operational, for over 7 years now. This means the guarantee of devolution is effectively meaningless on the ground.
So, this brings us, naturally, to India's role. For decades, India has had to perform a very delicate balancing act. Understanding its official position is absolutely key for your answers in the exam. India's official stance really rests on 3 pillars. First, it consistently says that its support for power devolution is constant and has not changed. Second, it acknowledges that it has a special duty towards the Tamil people of Sri Lanka. That's a direct legacy of the Accord. And third, and this is very important, India has always maintained that any solution must be within the framework of a united, undivided, and indivisible Sri Lanka.
However, a critical analysis, which is exactly what UPSC expects from you, means you have to look beyond just the official statements. While the stated position is firm, many commentators and analysts point to what they call a waning interest from New Delhi. The argument is that India's strategic focus has broadened to other areas: development, security, potentially diluting its focus on the Tamil question.
It's also really important to remember that this whole issue doesn't exist in a vacuum. There are other complicating factors, both inside Sri Lanka and in the wider relationship between the two countries.
For example, there's significant internal opposition in Sri Lanka. The leftist JVP party has, for a very long time, seen the accord as something imposed by India on their country. Then you have the persistent bilateral irritants, like the fisheries conflict, that often complicate diplomatic talks. And finally, you have the very sensitive question of the Sri Lankan refugees in India and their potential return. It all adds layers of complexity.
Okay, so let's bring all of this together. What does this actually mean for you, the aspirant? How can you use this information effectively in the exam hall?
Well, this topic is practically tailor-made for GS Paper 2. Under the heading, India and its Neighborhood Relations. It's a classic case study, really. It shows all the complexities India faces in its own neighborhood. You've got historical ties, ethnic links, strategic interests, and the principle of sovereignty all clashing with each other.
You could very easily see a question like this in your mains paper, and I want you to pay very close attention to that keyword, critically analyze. That's a directive. It means the examiner is not looking for a simple list of facts. They want a nuanced, multidimensional answer.
So to frame a high-scoring answer, you should structure it around these key tensions. First, discuss the conflict between the Accord as an international treaty versus Sri Lanka's domestic sovereignty. Next, analyze the balance India has to strike between its broader strategic goals and its historical special duty. Then, factor in the very real impact of Sri Lanka's internal politics. And finally, put the Tamil question into the context of the broader evolving bilateral relationship.
And it doesn't just stop at the mains. In the interview, the board might ask something more direct, something that tests your opinion and diplomatic sense. A question like this is designed to test your ability to think on your feet and propose a balanced approach. Remember, there's no single correct answer here. It's your structured thought process that they want to see.
So, we leave you with this final thought to ponder. This is the core dilemma for Indian foreign policy when it comes to this issue. How do you honor a historical commitment without infringing on a neighbor's sovereignty? Finding that path is the ultimate diplomatic challenge. Keep studying and keep analyzing. All the best.